50 states, 330 million people. When the grid goes dark, nukes, EMP, economic collapse, pandemic, 41 of those states become mass graves. 9 survive, just 9. I spent 500 hours on this. FEMA reports, nuclear target maps, prepper community intelligence, scientific studies from Rutgers and Nature, all of it cross-referenced and distilled into what you're about to hear. Location isn't just important. Location is everything. A 10-year food supply means nothing in Phoenix when the grid dies in July. A bunker full of ammo is worthless in Miami when 6 million desperate neighbors realize the ship stopped coming. Wrong state kills you faster than any disaster. Right state multiplies everything you do. 9 states, countdown from 9 to 1, then 6 international locations science says will rebuild civilization after nuclear winter. One critical rule first. The survival maxim rule #1 of the New World. The best defense isn't a gun, bunker, or stockpile. It's distance. Distance from targets. Distance from desperate populations. Distance from chaos that turns ordinary people into predators. Geography is the ultimate prep. Everything else is accessories. Now, the filters. The 6 filters, 6 criteria determine this list. Filter 1. Nuclear survivability. Fallout wind patterns matter more than blast radius. Prevailing westerlies push radioactive particles east. States that make this list are outside blast zones and outside fallout drift corridors. Filter 2. Natural disaster profile. Surviving nukes to die in a tornado is not a plan. Earthquake zones, hurricane corridors, floodplains, all disqualifiers. Filter 3. Legal framework. Constitutional carry status. Second Amendment sanctuary laws. The regulations on the books now determine what you can build, store, and defend. Filter 4. Off-grid viability. Can you legally disconnect from municipal systems? Some states encourage it, others criminalize rainwater collection. Filter 5. Economic accessibility. Perfect location means nothing at unaffordable prices. Land cost per acre. Property taxes. Real entry points for working preppers. Filter 6. Community resilience. Long-term survival requires networks, existing prepper populations, homesteader culture, mutual aid traditions. 6 filters, 50 states, 9 passed, starting at number 9. Number 9. Maine, the frozen fortress, northeast corner of America. Population 1.3 million, 90% forested wilderness, the most isolated state on the eastern seaboard. Why Maine survives nuclear war? Look at the geometry. New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. The entire eastern urban corridor sits southwest of Maine. Now consider wind patterns. Prevailing westerlies blow fallout east over the Atlantic Ocean, not north into Maine. While every other northeastern state chokes on radioactive drift, Maine sits upwind of the apocalypse. The geography literally shields you from contamination. 6,000 lakes, countless rivers and streams. While the Southwest wages water wars over dying aquifers, Maine has freshwater abundance that would make Utah weep with envy. Legal framework for preppers, constitutional carry since 2015. No permit required to carry concealed. The state trusts you to handle your own defense without government permission slips. Off-grid living isn't just legal, it's traditional. Northern Maine communities have been disconnected from municipal systems for generations. They're not preppers in the modern sense. They're just Mainers, living the way their grandparents lived. No zoning interference, no bureaucrats demanding grid connection. Build your homestead, dig your well, install your solar. Nobody asks questions. Target zones and pricing. Aroostook County, the northernmost, most isolated region. Piscataquis County around Baxter State Park. Washington County with the lowest population density in the state. Land runs $1,000 to $3,000 per acre in the north. Southern Maine near Portland pushes $5,000 to $15,000, but that's not where preppers belong. The trade-off, Maine winters are brutal. -20 Celsius is a normal January occurrence. The growing season compresses to 90 to 120 days depending on location. Agriculture requires greenhouse infrastructure and serious cold weather planning, and isolation cuts both ways. Emergency services are hours away. Medical emergencies become life-threatening when the nearest hospital is a 90-minute drive on icy roads. But that's exactly the filter. The same barriers that make Maine hard for you make it impossible for unprepared refugees fleeing Boston and New York. By the time urban evacuees figure out Maine exists, Winter will have sealed the border more effectively than any wall. One Aroostook prepper explained it. Maine's advantage is its disadvantage. Hard to reach, hard to survive. That keeps out everyone who didn't plan ahead. Number 8. Vermont, the disaster-proof anomaly. According to FEMA's own data, Vermont experiences fewer natural disasters than any other state in America. Not fewer major disasters. Fewer disasters, period. No hurricanes and too far inland. Tornadoes so rare they make regional news for weeks. Earthquake risk statistically negligible. Volcanic activity non-existent. Flooding below national averages. If natural disasters were a competitive sport, Vermont wouldn't qualify for the league. Why this matters for preppers? Every prep you build stays built. No tornado season threatening your shelter. No earthquake risk cracking your foundation. No hurricane flooding your stores. Vermont lets you accumulate resources without nature periodically wiping the slate. But the deeper advantage is social infrastructure. Vermont maintains the town meeting tradition, direct local democracy where citizens gather to make decisions face-to-face. This isn't colonial reenactment. It's a functioning governance network that has operated for centuries. When federal authority evaporates, these town structures become the default government. Vermont has been accidentally training for post-collapse community organization since before America existed. Legal framework, constitutional carry since 2017. Firearms ownership is your business and nobody else's. Off-grid living is legal throughout rural areas. The state doesn't criminalize self-sufficiency. 70% of Vermont is farmland or forest. Food production capacity is literally built into the landscape. Target zones and pricing. The Northeast Kingdom, Vermont's most isolated, most affordable region. Lamoille County, Orange County. Northeast Kingdom land runs $2,000 to $5,000 per acre. Central Vermont near Montpelier pushes higher, but you're paying for proximity to the modest population centers that serious preppers avoid. Disadvantages. Property taxes are punishing. Vermont extracts its revenue through real estate levies that will test your budget. Growing season is short, similar to Maine. And as a small state, resource diversity is limited. But small means defensible. Small means you can actually understand the entire system you're operating in. A Vermont prepper told me, "My neighbor is 5 miles away, but when I need him, he shows up." This state understands what community actually costs. Number 7. Wyoming, the empty quarter. Wyoming has fewer residents than any other state. 580,000 people across nearly 100,000 square miles. The math? 6 humans per square mile. Not 6 families, 6 individuals. This is genuine isolation. Land where your nearest neighbor is a ridge on the horizon. Privacy that cannot be purchased in most of America at any price. Legal paradise for preppers. Constitutional. Carry with some of the strongest Second Amendment protections in the nation. Wyoming treats firearms ownership as a fundamental right, not a privilege to be permitted. No state income tax. What you earn, you keep. The government's hand stays out of your pocket. Off-grid living isn't just tolerated, it's culturally expected. Nobody questions why you want to live 20 miles from pavement. They assume you have your reasons and respect them. Natural resources are staggering. Oil, natural gas, coal. Wyoming sits on energy reserves sufficient to power a small nation. When supply chains collapse, local resources matter. Target zones and pricing. Big Horn Basin. Powder River Basin. Wind River Range foothills. Remote parcels start at $500 per acre. Not a typo. $500 for genuine American wilderness. Water-accessible land with streams or springs runs $3,000 to $8,000. The harsh reality: Wyoming winters are not just cold, they're violent. Wind chill regularly pushes temperatures to -40. Exposed skin freezes in minutes. Livestock dies without shelter. The cold is an active threat, not an inconvenience. Growing season compresses to 60 days in some zones. 2 months to grow everything you'll eat for the next 10. Agriculture requires season extension technology. Greenhouses, cold frames, root cellars. Water is highly localized. Some parcels have abundant streams and aquifers. Others sit on high desert with nothing. Location selection isn't important. It's everything. Buy the wrong property and you own beautiful, worthless rock. And the elephant in the room? Yellowstone. The supervolcano beneath the park probably won't erupt in our lifetimes, but probably carries weight when the consequence is continental extinction. Most preppers file it under acceptable risk. A Wyoming homesteader summarized, "Out here, you don't know your neighbors because you don't have any. That's not a problem, that's the point." Number 6. Montana, the Redoubt's western flank, 4th largest state in America. 1 million people. 35% federal land that the government itself barely monitors. But Montana's real value isn't geography, it's culture. The prepper migration. Libertarian self-sufficiency advocates have been moving to Montana for 30 years. Homesteaders, off-gridders, Second Amendment absolutists, they've built networks, established supply chains, and created the social infrastructure that matters when systems fail. You're not pioneering empty wilderness. You're joining an existing movement with accumulated knowledge and mutual support. Montana is part of the American Redoubt, the region James Wesley Rawls identified as the optimal post-collapse zone. We'll discuss this more with Idaho, but understand, Montana isn't randomly selected. It's strategically positioned within the most deliberate prepper migration in American history. Legal framework, constitutional carry, Second Amendment sanctuary. The state has explicitly positioned itself as hostile to federal firearms restrictions. Water security is guaranteed by the Missouri and Columbia River systems. Drought isn't part of Montana's vocabulary the way it dominates southwestern planning, target zones, and pricing. Bitterroot Valley is where serious preppers concentrate. Harder living, real community, genuine mutual aid networks. Judith Basin offers more isolation with less infrastructure. Eastern Montana runs 1,000 to 3,000 per acre, affordable but dry. Western Montana with mountains and water ranges 5,000 to 20,000. The premium reflects actual value. Watch the trends. California money has discovered Montana. Wealthy refugees fleeing regulation are driving prices upward and culture sideways. Some areas that felt remote 5 years ago now face development pressure. Bozeman has become a trophy town for the rich. Avoid it. The Bitterroot and the Eastern Plains are where working preppers can still establish. Winters are hard. Fire season threatens forested regions more each year, and this is grizzly country. The wildlife will kill you if you're careless. A local explained the division. Two kinds move here, the wealthy and the ready. Wealthy go to Bozeman for scenery. Ready go to Bitterroot for survival. Number 5. Utah, where prepping is religion. Utah operates differently than every other state on this list. Here, systematic preparation isn't counterculture, it's doctrine. The LDS factor, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, officially counsels members to maintain 1 year of food storage. Not a suggestion, formal church guidance. 60% of Utah's population is Mormon. Calculate what that means. Nearly 2 million people who have been methodically preparing for disruption as part of their religious practice for generations. When the trucks stop rolling, Utah doesn't panic. Half the population already has a year of supplies in their basement. Institutional infrastructure. The LDS Church maintains its own welfare system. Farms, canneries, storehouses, completely independent of government programs. The ward system creates tight-knit local communities with established mutual aid protocols. When federal assistance becomes memory, Utah's backup system is already operational. They've been running parallel infrastructure for over a century. And then there's Granite Mountain Records Vault. Carved into solid rock outside Salt Lake City, climate-controlled, nuclear-hardened. The Mormons built civilization preservation infrastructure before most people understood that concept existed. Legal framework, constitutional carry since 2021. Gun-friendly culture throughout rural areas. The terrain is mountainous, natural defensive barriers that funnel movement and enable observation. Target zones and pricing. Cache Valley near Logan, Sanpete County, Iron County. Critical warning, avoid Salt Lake City. Any nuclear targeting scenario includes major population centers. SLC may not be a primary target, but it's not a safe assumption. Rural Utah is where the survival math works. Land runs 2,000 to 5,000 per acre in the countryside. Water-accessible parcels command premium pricing, and in Utah, water is survival. The critical weakness, Utah is drying. The Great Salt Lake is shrinking. Aquifers are stressed. Climate projections show desert reclaiming territory. Long-term water security is a question mark that other states don't have to answer. Utah's social infrastructure is unmatched, but the physical resource base is under pressure. A Utah prepper, who called himself a good Mormon, not a prepper, explained, "My grandfather stored food. My father stored food. I store food. We don't call it prepping. We call it obedience." Number 4. Missouri Ozarks, Zero Regulation Zone. Here's a sentence that changes everything. In much of the Missouri Ozarks, there is no zoning code. No zoning, no building permits, no inspectors, no bureaucrats requiring grid connection or approving your structures. You buy land, you build whatever you want. Transaction complete. Why this matters? This isn't legal gray area or loophole exploitation. Multiple Missouri counties, Shannon, Texas, Douglas, Ozark, have explicit policy. What you do on your land is your business. For preppers, this is the ultimate freedom. Build survival infrastructure without permission, without registration, without anyone documenting what you've constructed. In collapse scenarios, being off every government database is massive advantage. Natural infrastructure. The Ozarks contain over 6,000 caves, natural shelters carved by millennia of water erosion. Temperature stable year-round. Cool in summer, moderate in winter, radiation resistant. Some properties include caves as features. Imagine buying land with a built-in bunker provided by geology. Mark Twain, National Forest provides watershed protection and hunting grounds. The region is webbed with springs and creeks. Water security is embedded in the landscape. Legal framework, constitutional carry, Second Amendment sanctuary status. The culture is firearms positive in ways that coastal residents cannot comprehend. Target zones and pricing, Shannon County along the Current River. Texas County, Douglas County. Ozark County, specific towns, Eminence, Mountain View, West Plains. Prices will shock you. $1,500 to $4,000 per acre with water features. Spring-fed creek included at that price. $100,000 total buys 50 acres with creek, spring, possibly cave, and absolute freedom to build anything. Compare that to a California garage. Disadvantages: you're on the southern edge of Tornado Alley. Risk is lower than Kansas or Oklahoma, but not zero. Some areas have struggled with methamphetamine problems. Vet your neighbors and your county carefully before purchasing. Isolation means limited employment. Arrive with your income source already solved. Remote work, retirement, passive income. Don't expect local jobs. An Ozarks homesteader told me 50 acres, own well, own creek, own cave. Paid cash, under $100,000 total. Show me that deal anywhere else. Number 3. Arkansas, Ozarks, survival culture, majority. Arkansas has a statistic no other state matches. Approximately half the population maintains survivalist or self-sufficiency mindset, not internet preppers who bought freeze-dried food. Multi-generational Ozark families living close to the land since before prepping had a name. Cultural continuity. Great-grandmother gardened, canned, hunted, and stored food, because that's how survival worked. Grandmother did the same. Mother did the same. The current generation does the same. This isn't ideology. It's inheritance. The knowledge base is distributed across the population. The supply chains for self-sufficiency are established. The social networks exist. When lights go out, Arkansas doesn't have to learn anything new. It stops pretending to participate in the modern economy. Critical advantage over Missouri. Growing season exceeds 200 days. While Maine and Vermont compress agriculture into 3 months, Arkansas produces food for over 6. Longer seasons mean more harvests, mean more caloric resilience. The Ozark Mountains continue from Missouri into northern Arkansas, offering the same cave systems, springs, and forested terrain. But the climate is significantly more forgiving. Legal framework, constitutional carry with some of the most relaxed firearms laws in America. Off-grid living is legal, common, and culturally respected. The state doesn't just tolerate self-sufficiency, it admires it. Target zones and pricing. Newton County around the Buffalo River, federally protected waterway guaranteeing pristine watershed. Madison County, Searcy County, Marion County. Towns, Eureka Springs, Mountain Home, Jasper. Land, $1,000 to $3,500 per acre. River frontage commands up to $8,000. Still drastically affordable by national standards. Disadvantages: tornado risk is real. Not as severe as Oklahoma, but present. Plan structures accordingly. Summers are hot and humid. If you're coming from dry climates, the moisture will require adjustment. Internet infrastructure is inconsistent in remote areas. If you need reliable connectivity for remote work, choose your parcel carefully. An Arkansas native explained, "We don't say prepper here, we say living. Grandparents lived this way, parents lived this way, I live this way. It ain't about apocalypse, it's about not depending on things you can't control." Number 2. Tennessee, optimal balance. Tennessee is what happens when you optimize for sustainability rather than extremes. Not coldest, not hottest, not most isolated, not most connected. Tennessee occupies the middle of almost every metric, and that middle ground is exactly where long-term survival happens. Climate advantage, 4 distinct seasons with a growing season exceeding 200 days. Cold enough in winter to kill pests and naturally refrigerate stored food. Warm enough in summer to produce abundant harvests. The climate doesn't fight you, it cooperates. Water security. Tennessee and Cumberland rivers provide freshwater abundance that most states can only dream about. Consistent rainfall throughout the year. Drought simply isn't part of the vocabulary here. While Western states fight legal battles over water rights, Tennessee has more than it needs. Legal framework, constitutional carry since 2021. No state income tax. Tennessee lets you keep your earnings. The Freedom to Farm Act explicitly protects agricultural operations from municipal interference. Tennessee has legally enshrined the right to homestead without bureaucratic obstruction. Strategic positioning. The Appalachian Mountains along the eastern border provide natural barriers and defensible terrain. The Cumberland Plateau in the center offers elevation, forests, and distance from population centers. Nuclear targeting concerns are minimal. Tennessee lacks the major military installations and strategic infrastructure that attract warheads. Important enough to have resources, unimportant enough to avoid the target list. Target zones and pricing. Cumberland Plateau is the sweet spot. Crossville, Cookeville, Livingston, Jamestown, far enough from Nashville's growth to maintain character, close enough to supply chains for practical transition. Land runs 3,000 to 6,000 per acre on the plateau. Appalachian foothills come in at 2,000 to 5,000. Disadvantages. Nashville and its suburbs are exploding with growth. The urban zone is spreading. Some rural areas that felt remote 5 years ago now face development pressure. The plateau and eastern mountains are your safest bets for long-term isolation. Tornado risk exists in western regions where topography flattens toward Memphis. Stay east of the Tennessee River for optimal protection. Summer humidity is real. Adjustment takes time if you're coming from dry climates. A Tennessee homesteader summarized, "Tennessee is middle of everything. Middle of the map, middle of the climate, middle of the price range. Some people want extremes. I want to survive long term. Middle is where that happens." Number 1. Idaho, the Promised Land. In 2011, James Wesley Rawls, author of Patriots, How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It, and the most influential voice in modern prepper literature, published an article that launched a migration. He identified a region of the American Northwest as the optimal survival zone and named it the American Redoubt. Idaho, western Montana, western Wyoming, eastern Washington, eastern Oregon. Idaho sits at the center, not the edge, the nucleus around which the entire vision was built. Verified community. 14 years later, 60,000 active homesteaders have moved to Idaho, the highest concentration of self-sufficiency practitioners in America. People who didn't just read about this life, they built it, tested it, and proved it works. The infrastructure isn't theoretical. The community isn't hypothetical. Idaho's prepper network is functional, operational, and still growing. You're not pioneering, you're joining a proven system. Legal paradise, constitutional carry, Second Amendment sanctuary. Idaho has explicitly positioned itself as the most firearms-friendly state in the nation. Off-grid living isn't just permitted, it's culturally celebrated. The state operates on an assumption of self-reliance that other regions cannot comprehend. Resource base. Snake River and Salmon River systems provide water security. The Idaho batholith, a massive volcanic formation, created some of the richest agricultural soil in the country. Idaho produces more potatoes than any other state, not as curiosity, but because the land is extraordinarily fertile. Target zones and pricing. The Idaho Panhandle, Bonner, Boundary, Kootenai counties, contains the densest concentration of prepared citizens in America. Clearwater region and Salmon River Mountains offer more isolation but less community infrastructure. Towns, Sandpoint, Moscow, Grangeville, and areas near Coeur d'Alene, but outside the city proper. Northern Idaho runs 5,000 to 15,000 per acre and rising fast. Central Idaho remains 2,000 to 8,000. Southern Idaho 3,000 to 10,000, but with less water abundance. The narrowing window. California money-fleeing regulation has discovered the panhandle. Prices are climbing annually. The window isn't closed, but it's narrowing visibly. Winters are hard in the north. Fire season threatens forested regions. Climate pressures are real. But here's what Idaho offers that nowhere else can match. Verification. The people who moved 15 years ago based on Rawls's vision, still there. Their homesteads work, their communities function, their children are growing up in the life. The American Redoubt isn't concept anymore, it's fact on the ground. The Idaho-Montana-Wyoming triangle is where American civilization will rebuild after collapse. Not might rebuild, will rebuild. Idaho is number 1 because the preppers who actually did the work chose it first. They built the proof. All that remains is deciding whether you believe the evidence. Beyond America, the global survival lottery. Everything following is peer-reviewed science. Rutgers University nuclear winter models. Nature Journal Civilization collapse studies. University of Southampton geographic survival analysis. These are locations scientists, not bloggers, identified as highest probability survival zones for global catastrophe. Critical warning first. Almost every international location has fundamentally restricted firearms ownership. Geographic paradise combined with legal disarmament. If armed self-reliance is non-negotiable, most of these automatically disqualify. One exception at the end: New Zealand, geographic perfection, legal restriction. University of Southampton ranked New Zealand highest probability survival location for nuclear war. Nature Communications identified it as optimal collapse recovery zone. 2025 Global Peace Index places it third most peaceful nation, over 2,000 kilometers from any continent, 5 million people, 40% renewable energy already operational, glacial freshwater in quantities that make Utah's crisis look absurd, agricultural self-sufficiency built into the economy, no deadly wildlife. Unlike Australia, nature here isn't actively trying to kill you. The prepper problem. After Christchurch 2019, New Zealand banned semi-automatic firearms and implemented mandatory buybacks. Handguns are restricted to licensed club members only. Self-defense is not recognized as valid reason for ownership. Geographic perfection traded for legal disarmament. If that exchange works for you, New Zealand is objectively the global leader. If it doesn't, cross it off. Iceland, Armed Neutrality Without Arms 2025 Global Peace Index, most peaceful country on Earth. No military. The only NATO member without armed forces. Neutral since 1815. 100% renewable energy. Geothermal and hydroelectric work regardless of global supply chains. When grids collapse worldwide, Iceland still has power and heat. 300,000 people on an island the size of Kentucky. Reaching you requires crossing open ocean, natural barrier against refugee waves. The prepper problem. Semi-automatic weapons are banned. Handguns are effectively banned. Only bolt-action rifles and shotguns available, and licensing requires medical and psychological evaluation. Iceland offers energy independence and geographic isolation at the cost of armed self-defense. Tasmania, Southern Hemisphere shield Rutgers. Nuclear winter modeling shows Tasmania with 0% projected mortality in full-scale nuclear exchange. The Southern Hemisphere largely escapes fallout drift patterns. Tasmania, specifically, separated from mainland Australia, adds additional isolation buffer. Strong agricultural base, temperate climate, low population density. Australia without the deadly wildlife concentration. The prepper problem. Australia implemented some of the world's strictest firearms laws after 1996 Port Arthur massacre. Semi-automatic weapons are banned. Self-defense is explicitly not accepted as reason for firearms ownership. 28-day minimum waiting period. Geographic safety at the cost of armed self-reliance. Ireland, the Green Fortress. Second most peaceful country per 2025 index. Atlantic Ocean isolation. Gulf Stream climate moderation keeps winters mild. Legendary agricultural fertility. The land produces food almost effortlessly. Low population density by European standards. Historically neutral in international conflicts. The prepper problem. Irish firearms law ranks among most restrictive in the developed world. Self-defense is not recognized as valid ownership reason. Handguns effectively prohibited for private citizens. Only 5 firearms per 100 people. Green, peaceful, fertile, and disarmed. Okanagan Valley, Canada, deteriorating option. South Central British Columbia, protected from Cascadia subduction zone earthquake and tsunami risks. Semi-arid climate escaping Pacific Northwest's endless rain. Strong agricultural community, established homesteading culture. Canadian social stability remains higher than American averages. The prepper problem. Trudeau government banned over 2,500 firearms models in 2020. Handgun sales have been frozen since 2022. Mandatory buyback programs are ongoing. Provincial resistance exists, but federal law prevails. Canada is moving in the wrong direction for armed self-reliance. Geographically excellent and legally deteriorating. Patagonia, Argentina, the exception. Nature Food Studies specifically identified Argentina's southern cone as the region most likely to rebuild technological civilization after nuclear winter. 0% projected mortality from nuclear winter effects. Southern Hemisphere location completely avoids fallout drift patterns. Argentina is the world's 8th largest country. Patagonia offers vast, empty land with population density approaching Wyoming levels. Massive agricultural surplus. Argentina exports grain, beef, and soy in quantities that feed other nations. Hydroelectric power from the Paraná-Uruguay watershed. Wind energy infrastructure already operational in Patagonia. Why Argentina is different? President Milei signed a decree in June 2025 opening semi-automatic weapons to civilian ownership. Detachable magazine rifles are now legal for civilian purchase. The bureaucratic process is slower than American standards, but the trajectory is liberalization, not restriction. In a world where every other international survival destination has disarmed its citizens, Argentina is the exception. The only major survival-ranked country where gun rights are expanding rather than contracting. Geographic safety, agricultural capacity, defensive capability, the triple combination that preppers require, and it exists in South America. Is it perfect? No. Economic instability is real. Bureaucracy is challenging. Culture requires adaptation, but it's the only international option that checks all 3 boxes. The final punch: 9 states, 6 international zones, the complete map. Idaho at the summit, Tennessee for balance, Arkansas and Missouri for freedom and affordability, Utah for community infrastructure, Montana and Wyoming for isolation, Vermont and Maine for resilience. Beyond borders, Argentina for those willing to rebuild somewhere new. None of these places guarantee survival. Geography helps, community helps, preparation helps, but chaos doesn't distribute outcomes fairly. What these places offer is odds. Better odds than the 41 states that failed the filters. Better odds than cities where millions will compete for days of food. Better odds than coasts where infrastructure fails first and hardest. Location is the multiplier. Everything you do gets amplified or diminished by where you do it. You've got the list, you've got the criteria, you've got the data. Choose, move, build, or don't, and become background noise in someone else's survival story. The collapse won't ask if you're ready. Make your choice.